This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of
you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for. Now, I have to declare that I'm kind of a fan of PRS. They sent me Christmas cards. This is the only, except for G66, who have actually sent me Christmas cards as well. But I think, yeah, I should say I'm a fan of PRS. I bought this Silver Sky, and I think this is probably the guitar that maybe changed my mind on PRS in general. I just think it's like, I got this for about £1,150, and it's been, I think, one of my favourite purchases over the last year, really. But when the PRS SE DGT came out, it had a price tag of something like £1,049, maybe a bit higher, and to me this was like, well, wow, that's really pushing the envelope of what I was expecting to pay for a PRS SE. Now, I don't know if you might have seen yesterday, there was a release, the Herman Lee Chleo, and this comes with a whopping price tag of £1,899 in the UK. Peach have some in stock, and I wanted to, in this video, kind of discuss that, because I've been talking about the price of guitars and stuff, and how there is this huge gulf in terms of what you might pay for some guitars, and sometimes whether £2,000, if you bought an American guitar, you might not get crazy specs at all. If you pay £3,000, you might get some specs that, you know, like the Fender Ultralux Vintage. So this guitar, a nitro finish, some stainless steel frets, but actually, and locking tuners, but the sort of spec that you can actually get for considerably less from a brand like Sire, built over in Indonesia. So we're used to this idea that you can get really well spec guitars for the money from, you know, Indonesia and places like that. But I don't think we're used to accepting very specific circumstances paying this much money for an Eastern made guitar. So is this to do with tariffs? Is this to do with like the dollar being less effective, or is there a reason, so we'll get into this, why the PRS Chleo is kind of different to any other guitar that might have come before, that might justify the price tag? And what do you think of it? Let me know in the comments. When I looked into this a little bit, the first thing that I've seen around this Herman Lee guitar, there were two YouTubers that I think, so Phil McKnight and Andre Flood, and I don't know if they both bought them or whether they were sent them to check out, or whether they were loaned them. But I think there was something like 200 of those guitars made. Now, PRS also did this with Robin Ford, right, where they made like a limited series, you know, very small sort of build. And I think the idea with these is like, these are small runs like that PRS, and it was a very interesting, like, sort of different guitar build, like even, you know, as far as the join here, which was like under the flame maple top, and it kind of looked strange, but obviously that was a design choice. Now, that guitar came with a huge price tag, I think like $7,000, something like that. And obviously, the fact is that if you're building just 200 of these guitars, the costs are going to be a little bit higher anyway, or considerably higher. There's not going to be, you know, like a massive scale thing going on. But also, it's a limited edition, and like you don't have to find a huge audience of people. You know, I'm imagining those sold out. I'm presuming I'll have a look and see if I can still find any for sale, or are close to it. Because there's such a small amount of them, and there's going to be enough Herman Lee and Dragon Force fans that have kind of dentist money to be able to buy one or two of them. Now, the SE though is a totally different kind of thing altogether, and particularly I noticed in some of the blurb around this about this being a guitar available at a slightly more accessible price point, and for £2,000. I just don't know if that is that anymore. And the SE has changed over the years, right? So it started off as the student edition. The whole point of it was Santana said to Paul, you know, can we do something so that people that can't afford these very expensive guitars can afford one of these? And the SE, actually, I think is about 80% of PRS's business versus the US builds. Like, it's really important to them. And the SE guitars started off kind of cheap, and at this point now, I think it's pretty reasonable to think that there's a huge chunk of these that fulfill the place that the S2 used to. So the S2 used to be like the affordable version of the American-made guitar. And I think at this point it's kind of not really that possible to build an American guitar for significantly cheaper. And so it doesn't make any sense to have a £1,000 PRS S2 anymore. Like, they're closer to 1,500, 2,000. So the SE range has sort of just had to grow to fill that void. Now, why is the Chleo as much as it is? So there's two things that I think you should be aware of that do come with a huge price tag if you were to buy them not attached to a PRS guitar, and that's the Fishman Fluence pickups. So they're not made by PRS, right? And I think those would attract a price of about £300, £400 if you or I were to go and buy them, because it's a set of three, right, that is specifically made for this guitar. And then also the Floyd Rose 1000 trem system, if I were to buy that from Anderton's, for example, would cost me £400. So there's maybe £700, you know, between £500 and £700 in just those two parts. So you can see how this stuff works. Like, if you're not going to compromise on, you know, having cheaper pickups in there or cheaper hardware, and maybe this does give a clue as to why some of these Indonesian guitars end up being cheaper. Maybe it's like dirt cheap pickups that they're able to put in there, or dirt cheap hardware, because the wood is going to cost roughly what it costs, right? But if you then start to upgrade those elements, then the guitar might get closer to being, you know, sort of £2,000 instrument. So the PRS DGT, what was that? About 1,049, 1,099. And you imagine, like, maybe that's something close to similar in terms of what bits and pieces would cost there. Like, it's a mahogany body, I think, and also a maple top, which I think is the same here. This is a 24 fret build. Is it an ebony fretboard? We'll get into some of the specs here, but maybe this is something to get used to. Now, there's also one other brand, I think, that has been doing some expensive guitars that are coming out of Indonesia, and those are the Strandbergs, which I think, because they're such like a unique and different design, I think people are used to paying a bit more for them. So I think Strandberg are one of those brands that have been kind of testing the limits here. But also Ibanez with their like the Tim Henson ones. I don't think those are Japanese made. I could be wrong about that, but I think they've got a few signature Indonesian guitars that are around that sort of £1,500 price range. And if you stick in like a really decent set of Fishman pickups, or expensive set of Fishman pickups, I never played them to know if they're decent, and some non-licensed, like proper legit Floyd Rose hardware, then this is maybe how you get to that £2,000 sort of price mark. Would you pay that much for a guitar out of Indonesia, or you like, well, I would reserve that for a Japanese or American made guitar? Or do you think that there's some of the work coming out of these Cork factories and PRS rival this American made stuff now? Because I think there is a point where you think, like, if they're making guitars at sufficient scale and they're all trying to do pretty much the same thing, which is like CNC made guitars, that, you know, is there any reason that a Chleo from Indonesia shouldn't cost this amount of money? I don't know. I thought it was an interesting one to talk about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Will you be buying one? I would be interested to try one, to demo it, but realistically, for my channel, I don't think I can go out and spend £1,900 on a guitar that doesn't really suit my playing style in that kind of way. So yeah, but it looks interesting. I think in terms of like the business part of it is kind of an interesting thing to now have an SE model which is like nearly £2,000. It's pretty crazy. Here we have one in stock at Peach. I don't think they've got the weight, but it says that they've got a couple of these in stock. This is a representative photo, so maybe this isn't the best place to go. We'll go on PRS's website as well. So in terms of spec, I will talk about this. Signature model created in collaboration with world-renowned guitarist Herman Lee, built as an accessible version of the exclusive PRS Chleo Limited Edition, which I believe, let's see if we can find any. This is the Fishman Fluence stuff that I was telling you about. So like Scott LePage's pickup set, like nearly 300 quid, and that's just 2 humbuckers. So you could imagine like 300, 400 could be a price for 3 or 4 of them, like if you or I were to go and buy them off the street. And the Floyd Rose trem system, 329 at Guitar, 400 at Anderton's. So serious hardware, right? So the price of those was £7,099. Carbon fibre reinforced bolt-on maple neck. Now, does the Anderton's one have that as well? The SE, reinforced with high modulus carbon fibre rods. So they're not pulling any punches with this design. Fishman Fluence Signature series, Floyd Rose 1000 tremolo. They're proper phase tuners with wing buttons. 20-inch fretboard radius, 24 frets. Maple with flame maple veneer. Mahogany neck joint. So I don't know, where do you think? Because this is, you know, legitimately like a high-end guitar built in Indonesia. That could definitely be a thing, right? So normal sort of PRS SE stuff though, we're used to being like that's an incredible looking guitar. £7, 6 ounces. I've had a few of these guitars that I bought just to demo. Like, these are not budget looking guitars anymore, some of them, right? That is like a quality looking instrument. And if you're going to stick carbon fibre rods in the guitar, how are you going to be able to do that particularly cheap? You're probably not. Proper hardware, Fishman and stuff like that. Looks like decent fret job. I mean, it's not a guitar for me, obviously. They've, instead of doing the limited edition version, they've got a slightly different thingy jig here. So it is like it's not an exact replica, which I think is in some ways, looking at it, this is the main difference. I think maybe I even prefer the newer one. Where have we got? What have we got? Have we got any images of it? A really interesting carved top. So it looks a little bit different to the. So this is the posh model, which that is a wild, like a special, pretty innovative neck joint there. Do you know what I mean? Like that actually does look. Not for me, but that is a significantly different guitar than you could get anywhere else, certainly aesthetically. Whereas the SE is a little bit more run-of-the-mill. It kind of looks like a Ibanez S. What does the back look like? They still have some of that sculpting. Not all of it. So it's not like for like, right? But it is close in some ways that might matter. Yeah, interesting. I don't know. For me, can I see myself spending that kind of money on one of these? Not necessarily, but I think, yeah, interesting. So the SE is just sort of changed, right? And these, like, this is not a budget guitar at all. Like, they've started to turn into, you know, that gap between budget and S2. Like, there are still a few budgety ones, but are they even like these ones, the SE Satin ones? But a lot of them are actually pretty high quality stuff now. So just the SE has changed, really, I guess is what's happened. This is, I've asked PRS if I could demo one of these, because I think they're fantastic looking guitars. Look at it. But I don't think there's any in stock yet. But yeah, for an SE, and I think this one, again, for, what are they, like £600-700? Like an incredible looking guitar for the money. I wonder what they're actually like. Anyway, cheers for stopping by.